When did you first think that coaching was going to be what you did after your playing days?
So when I retired, I can't even remember the date I retired. I was probably retired. West Ham fans probably think I retired in 2007 with all the injuries I had. So yeah, so when I retired,
I was going to say, is that the sort of thing you think about when you're injured?
Oh, it just pained me at West Ham because I think I like the West Ham fans because I think they're quite a knowledgeable lot of fans, and I could just never show them the best of me. And at this stage of my career, I was the most dedicated with regards to eating the right, didn't drink alcohol, first into training, last out of training, and I could just never stay fit. Again, we were saying, could it be this? How many games I played at a younger age? Probably that's a part to play. The way I was living my life in my prime, we were partying non-stop and drinking, and like I said, living the life of a celebrity and not a footballer. That obviously caught up to me massively. So, like I said, I just wanted the West Ham fans to see the real me and to break my leg 3 games into my career in my prime. It does rile me because I really liked their fans. I thought their fans were, considering the money I probably cost with regards to wages and how little I was on the pitch, they were very patient and very good to me. And yeah, like I said, I just couldn't get myself fit enough to show them what I was about. But yeah, so I wasn't thinking of retirement. As a player, you always think that someone could get you right. You'll go and see the right specialist. I had Andy Rolls as my West Ham physio at the time. He came in probably 2nd or 3rd year I was at West Ham, so I probably had 18 months, 2 years with Rollsy. So I know what Rollsy's going to offer here. And yeah, we tried everything, literally everything. I just couldn't stay fit, and I couldn't wait to retire. Honestly, it was just like it was a huge weight lifted off my shoulder because the last, like I said, 5 years of my career was just going to see specialists all over the world and having the humiliation of breaking down. There's nothing worse. So, like I said, I was playing at West Ham. I pulled my thigh after 20 minutes, and then carry on to half time because I just didn't want the board going up and the groans and that. I just was so embarrassed. Even when I came back to Ipswich on loan, I think Phil knows the story. I don't know if you know, Ben, but so I came back. Paul Jewell rings me on Friday morning and says, "Can you come in? We'd like you on loan for a month. It'll benefit you. You can get fit to go back to West Ham." So I rush around on Friday. All my boots and stuff are at West Ham, and I had special orthotics in my boots because of my injuries, my legs. These orthotics got me right balanced, so I didn't have my boots, so I used Paul Jewell's boots, and we joined in training, and it was probably the last 5 minutes of training. I pulled my thigh. I can feel my thigh completely pull, and I was so embarrassed. It was like a local lad coming home. There was a big Kieron's coming back to Ipswich. I played Leeds. I played probably 80 minutes in absolute agony. Honestly, I can remember just thinking, I just cannot tell you. It's just like, it's the most embarrassing thing ever. So I played 80 minutes against Leeds with probably a grade 2 thigh strain. And then we had a game on the following Tuesday against Watford. And I can remember Paul Jewell saying, "Yeah, you have a recovery date." And I was trying to convince him that, I can't play. Like, playing 2 games in a short, because I didn't want to tell him about my thigh. And he must have looked at me and gone, "Are you winding me up? You haven't played football for so long and you're telling me you don't want to play at Portman Road against Watford?" But I was just so embarrassed. So I convinced him to play. I'll start on the bench, and then I came on and we got battered by Watford. I think Danny Graham scored a couple. And my thigh was killing me again. And then we had Stockport coming up at home. And we were doing shape on the Friday. And I just thought, I'm just going to have to own up. And I just put my hand in and said, oh, my thigh's hurt. And I walked in and I could see Paul Jewell shaking his head like, this guy doesn't even love football. And it wasn't. It was just the embarrassment of the injuries. That's how bad it got. So, like, my big return to Ipswich was just like, within my first training session, I popped my thigh. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Because what?
Anyway, I can't remember the question. Yeah. So where?
Yeah. Well,
sorry, we just went on a complete different tangent. So yeah.
But what actually ended your career was the sort of ability to recover from games, wasn't it? You were playing a game on a Saturday, but weren't able to recover.
Yeah, but that's old age. I think that recovers everyone. where they always say 48 hours is probably when you feel the worst after a game. So if we play a game on the Saturday, the Monday is when we do very little. It's just open up your legs. It's just like a long warm up, really. Might have some boxes, little five-a-side, and then you go. But so say if I played on the Saturday, my legs would still be fucked until Thursday, and I was like, this is time for me to just call it a day. But yeah, sorry. Well, yeah. So when I retired, I was quite fortunate that I was financially okay. So I just thought, I'm going to have a year out, enjoy life, enjoy the golf course, go to all the sporting events that I always said I wanted to go. So I went to like Mayweather fights, Mayweather Pacquiao, UFC events. I always said I was going to go to a WrestleMania, but I never went to a WrestleMania. I was going to go to a Super Bowl. And in the time being, I was doing the odd media gig, and I've had a lot of offers to do a lot of media stuff. But I don't like to be these players because I think you have to be more and more controversial. They love it for clickbaits. I'm not on social media, but I hear clickbaits, and they love the Vikings and the world because they give you headlines for days. And I remember, like I said, when I was a player, I hated when ex-player used to criticise players, and I didn't really want to be a hypocrite and just hammering players for the sake of hammering players. And it was Lee and Brian. They said, why don't you come in and do some coaching? So I came in and I worked with Liam Mannings at Ipswich Under-16. And I did enjoy the coaching, but I left quite early because I didn't enjoy what I see at the football club, if I'm being honest. Just the way, again, why I think that I'm really big on standards now as a coach, because I think why I'm so big on standards is because I know if you take your eye off the ball, your standards are not at a certain level, the game will just go by without you. I've lived that. I could say, look at me, this is what happens if you don't have the standards. You should be having all these England clubs and playing for all these big clubs, and you didn't achieve it. So when I'm talking standards, I think I'm the perfect example, and that's why I'm so high on demand in it. And when I came back into the club, I didn't feel right with what I was seeing, so I kind of let it be. But I did always like the coaching bug. I did have the coaching bug, and I got my coaching badges, and like I said, I was doing a bit of media, but nothing concrete. And then so I think it was about 18 months later, BK comes and sits me down and says, listen, you could be a real asset. Pitched his idea of what he see the club's future would be, and that's when I did the 18s with ads. And like I said, I was quite fortunate that year that we had a very good age group. Idris, El Mazouni and Dobbs were the two standouts. Obviously, we didn't really have Bailey and Dylan Crow that much that season because they were playing regularly for the 23s. But we had a real good youth team, and I just loved seeing your work during the week come out on the training pitch and seeing how, especially like I said, I mentioned Iddy and Dobbs because they were probably the two standouts of the year, and to see how their games developed was just like, I loved that. I get more benefit out of seeing that than I did then seeing me do well, if you know what I mean. So I definitely had the bug, and the only problem I hated with the 18s is that, and again, this is not a knock on the parents. The parents care for their well-being, but if you don't pick a player, you have to deal with why is my son not playing? You have to have meetings, and I was like, I don't like that side of the game. So I was quite fortunate then that Craig Bellamy had gone over to Belgium with Vincent Kompany, and he told me to just come over and work with them and watch them and shadow them. And when I went over there and to speak to Vincent Kompany, who's been probably playing the last 3-4 years of his career under Pep, and just hearing stories of Pep and philosophies and patterns, and just blew my mind away. So I love the fact that I got that experience. And then, like I said, again, Lee and Brian were always on the phone to me constantly and said, look, we feel there could be a role for you with 23s, which are young men. You don't have to worry about the parent side. And this was probably on talks for a while, but then obviously the COVID hit, didn't it? So obviously Marcus was not going to give the green light to anything because he likes to save money, and as he does. And once the season resumed and I was given the green light to do the 23s and to work with Terry Butcher and to work with these players, it was a great natural progression from my coaching career, which I'm hooked, and I always want to do the coaching gig, even if, like I said, the new owners came in, and you've seen a lot of departures going from the staff point of view. And if I was one of them, I wouldn't give up this dream. I want to better myself as a coach and want to make players better, and let's see where it takes me.
What about the coaches you've worked with then? Because obviously we talk about the sort of lineage of Sir Bobby, who you worked with at Newcastle, George, who of course was one of his players in the Great Town team, and of course Terry as well, that you're working with now. Who are the people who've most influenced how you coach or look at management?
It's crazy to think, and I don't mean this disrespectful, for probably the era that I played in the era before. I know that you could say that Bobby was one of the first to play Eric Gates in a number 10 role, but in our days it was basically a 4-4-2 versus a 4-4-2. You might throw in a 3-5-2, but there wasn't inverted fullbacks the way it is now, and the false fullback position and creating overloads, and the goalkeepers were not ball playing goalkeepers who created overloads on the pitch. So, and I don't want to sound disrespectful to my era or to the coaches in my era, because Sir Bobby Robson's one of the greatest managers of all time. But I just think, I look at all the coaches that influenced and that were the best for me in my career, and why they were so great was their man management skill. And even in today's football, you look at Mourinho, who's probably one of the greatest managers of all time. It's pretty obvious to everyone from the outsiders that he lost the change room at Man United. There was these big issues with Pogba, and even the way he treated Luke Shaw and the Dele Allis. And you need players to keep your jobs nowadays. In Sir Alex Ferguson, Sir Bobby's thing, you had time as a manager. You got a 6-year punt at it, 4 or 5 years, so you can show who's the boss. Because if players don't listen to you, you get them out and you bring players who. But in today's football, especially in today's football, where you're given 3-4 months, well, Paul Hurst had 10 games. It just goes to show you how much players, how managers need the players. So I always used to say that obviously the manager should be the most important person in the club. But if I was going into I want to one day be a manager and go into that side of football, you have to play the game, I think, and you have to say to the players, you're just as important as me, because basically I need you more than you need me. And if you get a few promotions and you get a successful year, which buys you time, then you can then be the real boss. So all the best managers, Bobby Robson, George Burley, even Tony Mowbray, who had a short spell at Middlesbrough towards the end of my career, Neil Warnock. Again, it's not so much for what they do on the training pitch, it's what they do to make every player feel special. But then, obviously, the way the game's going, you do have to have a real tactical element, and you have to be a real good coach to get your methods apart. But you need the whole package to that today, because if you ain't got the man management skills, you could be the best, greatest coach ever in the world, and you will get sacked because you need the players on your side. So it's a massive balancing act, and that's one of the things that intrigued me. So, like I said, I'm so thankful for Paul Cook. I'm thankful for Mick McCarthy. I was thankful for Tony Mowbray. I've gone to go to Blackburn and visit him and pick his brains. I pick people's brains. I've got Brendan Rodgers who I can ring, go and visit at any time and pick his brains. And listen, there's no right or wrong way of coaching it, but I just like to nitpick, and I'll take that from you and nick that. And hopefully when I'm ready to go in a manager, or if I ever get the opportunity as a first team coach, I can bring what I've learned and hopefully have a decent crack of it, because it's a very tough gig. And I just love as a player, you're in a team environment, but you're kind of selfish. After the game, you're self-critical on yourself. You don't start, but he was crap. Titus done another blunder. David Johnson missed another own goal. You don't really think of that as a player, but as a manager, you take the responsibility of everything on your shoulders. Was the warm-up right? Was my tactics right? Why was he not right? Did I not give him the instructions? It's a whole package, and I just love that kind of, you don't just think about yourself, you think about everybody, and it's a great buzz when it goes right. And like, obviously, the last game of the season when we played Sheffield United, it's a lonely place when you're at Bramall Lane and you're 4-0 down and you're looking at the clock and there's still 5 minutes to go to half time, and you go, even then you're preparing, what do you say at half time? They're going to be low. How can I pick them up? They're probably expecting a bollock, and all these things are going through your brain while the game's going on. So you've still got to watch the game and see how you can change the game. But already I'm thinking team talk. They're going to be at the lowest lows. It's the biggest game of the season, and they've already lost the game at half time. It's just so fascinating. So fascinating.
And that's at under 23 level, without the kind of crowd aspect and without the media aspect and all that kind of thing. And this is sort of what you talked about after the Shrewsbury game, what you were learning sitting in the dugout with Paul Cook.
Yep. And the crazy thing, Paul Cook always laughs about it, because when Paul Lambert lost his job, if someone would have said to me, if the Ipswich job was offered to you, would you be ready for it? And I'd go, 100%. I'd easily be ready for the job. And I think from a football point of view, of my football ideas and coaching the team, I would be okay for it. But all the other stuff around it, it's just been eye-opening for me to see what the manager has to deal with. And it's absolutely a bonkers world out there. So, like I said, it has made me get a reality check that maybe I've got a lot more to learn. And again, I'm just thankful that the manager seems to have built up some trust in me and shown me a lot of faith. And his door is always open, and I love that. Even Mick, in his own way, Mick was a complete different. Mick was more, I don't want to make this thing, but Mick was all first team. It was all really about the first team. Obviously, he wants the youth team and everyone to do well, but his main focus was the youth team. He was the alpha male. He was very polite in the way he was the alpha male, but everyone knew he was the alpha male, if you know what I mean. And you could ask Mick anything and he'd always kind of give you his verdict. But sometimes I felt that, kept questioning him. I'd become a burden, if you know what I mean. It would be like, oh, here he goes. What does he want again? And nagging little coach, I've got to focus on him. And that's not a knock on Paul on Mick, because, like you said, the first team it's not a 9 to 5 job. It's like a 7 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night job being a first team manager. People take this stuff home with them. Even under 23s, I take an under 23s result home with me. That's one of the things I've got to learn. I've got to learn how to switch off, and then I don't take it into my home life. So when I was just talking about Mick and Paul, Paul's door's always open. I could be in his office for an hour just battering him with questions, and he'd just laugh and just answer all the questions. Because he just laughs. He goes, "You thought you were ready for this job, didn't you?" And he just laughs at me, goes, "You have no idea." I was just like, wow. So yeah. Because
you got on quite well with Paul Hurst, didn't you, as well?
I got on probably more with Dyer, which was, it did make me laugh, is that if you ask, I've got a lot of Ipswich fans who are my friends, and they say Paul Dyer was a dick, and Dyer was a bully, and Dyer was this and that and this and that. But what I loved about Dyer was what he showed for the academy. People didn't see that. They came to every academy game that they could come and watch. Every afternoon, they would come and watch us when we had our afternoon session. Dyer would come out and take sessions for the lads and show them how the first team want to press the ball, how the first team want to build from the back. And I love that, because people say, well, that's disrespectful, because I could be doing a session and then a first team manager comes out and the intensity just rises. And you could say, well, that's disrespectful on you as a coach. And no. I've been there. I've been a player. When you see a manager showing an interest in you, you can't, honestly, you find this adrenaline from somewhere deep within, because everyone wants to impress the first team manager. It's just the way the world is. That's why you have a pecking order. And what I loved about them, they were always there, and they empowered the kids. Oh my God, the first team manager wants to come and watch us. You know what I mean? That's so empowering. So I did get on well with Paul Hurst, and I did get on well with Chris Dyer, and it was more so because of what they did for the kids. And I'll never forget that. So when I heard the stories about the bullies of the first team, I can't comment on that because they train on the other side of the road to us. But I always say as well, I've been a player. When we're players, we always want to make excuses. It's always a manager's fault. It's always this fault. We never want to look at ourselves in the mirror. I've been there. It's never our fault. The tactics are crap. The manager's crap. Physio's crap. The sports science is crap. That's just the way the world of the footballers are. No? Listen, it's not a knock. I'm not knocking our footballers at our football club. I was a footballer. I was the exact same position as them. And like I said against Shrewsbury, well, hang on a minute. It was Paul Hurst who was the problem. Okay, so we get rid of Paul Hurst. Oh, was it Paul Lambert was the problem? Oh, okay, we'll get rid of Paul Hurst. Oh, so it's Paul Cook now. When is it realised? When are we all going to come in and have some realisation and go, okay, they could be part of the problem, the managers, but maybe it's us as well. That's why I even dug out the academy coaches, because we always talk about how great our academy is. Well, why haven't we sold a player for £6.5 million like you sold me? Why haven't we sold a £5 million Titus, a Darren Ambrose, a James Scowcroft, a Richard Wright? We're selling, and you can say, okay, well, you don't know what a Ben Knights would go for, or a Charlie Brown, but we need to do our jobs better. So we have £6 million players. I don't want to see our players struggling in a League One side. I want to see our players absolutely tearing this league to pieces and going on to represent their country. So if we're not producing that, I take that as my responsibility as well. I'm not going to say, well, it's because our first team are this and that, or no. As an academy coach, I have to be better to get these players up to a level that I feel that their potential should be. So we have to fulfill their potential. I hate this excuse. I had it my whole career, and one of the good things with me now, I've had time to reflect. I'm very self-critical. I can hold my hand up and say, I was a dick when I was a younger lad. I didn't live my life right, and that's why my standards are so high now. Because if you let your standards go, you are done. So yeah, I just, that's what's so great about the coaching. My experiences as a player and having this, I just tried to pass on all the information, and let's see where these kids go with it.
You mentioned Ben Knights, and I think people talk about Marcelo Flores as well. And if you'd have been coming through now, would you have ended up at Manchester City as a 16-year-old or Chelsea as a 16-year-old, do you think?
No, because George Burley was our manager and George Burley would play me. If I was a kid in the George Burley era, then I think the Ben Knights and that would stay here. I really do, because, okay, say they could get offered 500, 600 quid a week here, and at Man City they could be on 5-6 grand a week. The way I look at it is that if they make 20 games in the first team back to back to back, they're already going up to the grands and grands a week, and they're getting that first team football that the Chelsea players or the Man City players ain't getting. So I just feel that if you're a young player, as a parent and as a young player, you just look at the pathway of a football club, and is my pathway blocked? And again, this is not a knock on Mick McCarthy. Mick McCarthy wanted a team of men. Mick McCarthy wanted a team of people he could trust. Mick McCarthy wanted consistency. Teddy Bishop couldn't play in Mick McCarthy's team until he learnt the ugly side of the game. Simple as that. When he learnt the ugly side of the game, Teddy Bishop was a Mick McCarthy player. Andre Dazelle flitted in and out of the team with Mick McCarthy because he didn't do the ugly side of the game. So, again, I think when Ben Knights and that, they're seeing a Mick McCarthy and they're going, well, I'm 4'11", whatever. I'm a totally different player. But then my argument to Ben Knights as well hang on a minute. He did sign Ryan Fraser on loan. He did sign Selena on loan. If you're good enough and you do the ugly side, he did sign with Tom Lawrence. It's not like he has a team of 11 workhorses. He has flair players. So I just feel that as a kid, you have to see a pathway in the first team where you can go on and flourish. And for whatever reason, over the last 3 years, maybe us going down a league as well hasn't helped that process. So the sooner we get better at this league and into a championship, or even if we get into a Cat 1 status, then who knows? But yeah, we can't keep afford to losing our best players. And again, we say best players, we can't, like Flynn. We struggled to get Crystal Palace to pay 1.9 million for Flynn. We should be, if Flynn's, we're saying our crown jewel in the academy, we should be hoping that we're getting 5-6 million for Flynn down. So again, we have to do better as a package, as a football club, to make these players £6 million players. It can't be all on Flynn Downs why he's not a £6 million player.
So 23s, then you did allude to your Sheffield United match. We'll gloss over that game, but a successful season up to that point, really.
The greatest thing about the 23s football is I'm quite, what's the word? I like to be organised. And what's so great about when you're a first team manager is that you pick your numbers, how many numbers are training with you, you pick what you're doing, what pitches you're using, blah, 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 blah. With the under 23s, you cannot plan for anything. So you've got an idea in your head that you've got 20 players and we're going to be working on a counter press, for example, and then the manager comes in 20 minutes before your session and go, I need 12 of your players. We're doing shape. And you're ended up with 8 players. You have to just go off the cuff. And it is the best learning. It's the best learning thing for me, because now I think if anything was thrown my way, right, you've got 3 players, we need to do something on a pattern of play that would happen in the game, get on with it. I could just go, buh, 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 buh. And that's all because of the unpredictability, where you just have to adapt and change. Where probably when I was in the under 18s with ads, and then I'd gone to Anderlecht with the bigger clubs and with the bigger players, you know exactly what numbers you got, you know exactly what's happening. And probably the best learning device I've had with the 23s is the unpredictability. And it prepares you for, listen, I wouldn't want to work like that all the time. Trust me, I like to speak to my sports scientists what kind of targets we're going to hit for the data with the distance we're going to do in this training system. We all plan it the night before. But sometimes, like I said, things are out of your hand. The players, there's injuries, they need to do something, and then all of a sudden we've got 3 players and we've got a real high intense day. I've got to hit a total distance of like 6K and 1,000, and you think you've only got 3 players, but you just have to think of, you have to put this guy's running in sessions and stuff like that. So I've loved that aspect of it. Probably what I haven't liked is that in the 23s football this season, I think we use 62 players, which is really, really high. Listen, it's been well documented how many pros we had at the football club with regards, but to have 62 players playing the 23s is a lot. Obviously, Chris Hogg went on to Newcastle, and I spoke to Chris Hogg, and I just by chance I said, "How many players have you used this season? Your 23s?" And they're a Premier League club, and they were only up to like 40. So we've used 22 more players than like a Premier League Cat 1 team for under 23s. And again, all you want is kind of try to get a consistent base. Not so much for me, it's more for the players. So they get that, they build the relationships on the pitch. And when you're saying you've got 60 odd players, it's a nightmare. And that's something that myself and the academy coaches and speaking to the manager, and obviously when Mark Ashton starts and Rolsey, we will have to find probably a path of getting more of our players on loans, whether they're playing men's football locally for the Leystons and the Needhams and that, because we can't, I just don't think that's right, that using 62 players, it's just not fair on them.
Are some first team managers more helpful than others when it comes to the 23s? In terms of your job as a 23 manager?
Well, again, it's crazy because if you're a 23 manager, in a way you're buzzing when you get given first team players. But me and Terry were like, I hope we don't get any first team players this day. One, because we'd worked with the players, the younger players, all week. And also, I was quite fortunate that, I've always said this to Terry, that we were probably quite fortunate that when we were first team players, there was not many times in our career where we were bombed out and having to go back down and play reserves. I only had to play reserves if I was coming back from an injury or something to give me some game time. So the dynamics of players, some players feel it's a chore going back to the 23s. You have to give them a G up. You don't know what you're going to get. Are they going to try a leg? Obviously, the manager's saying if they don't try a leg, you take them off after 20 minutes. I don't want to humiliate it's sometimes hard. So when first team players have got their mind right and they go, right, this is fitness at the end of the day, I love it because we can say to the young lads, this is the standard to get into the first team. When they do it properly, they lead by example. It's just, it can go the other way when they're meant to be leaded by example, and I'm big on standards, and then they're not really putting it into the game and the young lads are seeing that. I think that sets off a bad example. So it is a tough one. Like I said, hopefully the squad's smaller and we don't get so many first team players next season. That's just my preference on it because I like the players that we work with. But I know that there's going to be players coming back from injuries or needing games or need to be topped up, and so be it. You just have to, again, it's one of the things you have to adapt. You give them pep talks beforehand and say, well, what was pleasing, I think we played Bristol. We played Bristol at home and we had Freddie Sears, we had Aaron Drine and we had Dobbs. They all played, and I think we beat Bristol City 4-2 at home, and the gaffer came and watched, and they all made the squad the following week. And I think Freddie Sears started the next game. I can't remember who it was against. It might have been Wigan away or something. They all were involved or a game. And that was good because you can go, see, if you do it properly in the under-23s, this is what happened. You get rewarded in the first team. But again, you and the manager of the first team have to kind of be on on par with that. And like I said, I think I've got a decent relation with Paul Cook, and something that will hopefully benefit the 23s and the first team players who need fitness.
He said at his I think one of his last press conferences, about the first meeting he had with you, and he said, "I didn't expect it to be a very good meeting," he said. And then he came out sort of after half an hour, sort of impressed. What did you say to him? Can you tell us what you said to him?
All I can remember is we played Accrington Stanley, and I think he was there, but he wasn't officially doing the game. It was Matt Gill and Brian. And Lee rung us up the day of the game and said that the following day, on the Wednesday, that you've got 10-minute meetings with the manager. He wants to speak to you, Nashi and Brian. You, Nashi and Terry. He just wants to say hello, pick your brains about things, just a general kind of introduction. And it's funny because I always go, it does make me laugh, but I just go, they obviously probably have heard of a lot of stories about the younger me, and they're probably ruling me off before they're even started. It just happens. If you ask random people up and down the country, what do you think of Kieron? They'll say, it's probably a knob. It's something you've got to deal with because, like I said, probably from the age of 21 to 27, I was acting like a knob. So I don't think they're being harsh in what they're saying. So obviously, when I sat with the manager, I didn't. Again, I'd heard things about him. If you know what I mean, I got told certain things and certain traits about him. So I went into the meeting expecting a different kind of Paul Cook, if you know what I mean. And what was crazy was it was meant to be a 10-minute meeting, and I was in there for an hour and 5 minutes, and we were just talking football and feeding off each other's energy. And I can remember coming out with a smile on my face, and I think Lee O'Neill said to the manager, "Bloody hell, you're one of the first to put a smile on his face for the last couple of weeks or something." And I was absolutely buzzing. Like, he gave me that enthusiasm, that buzz again, which probably, and I don't want to, again, it's not having a knock on Paul Lambert. Paul Lambert was, again, it's about first team. He was under a lot of pressure to get promoted. So he had no time for me. Listen, I'm not knocking him for that, because I've seen, if you don't get the results, you lose your job. You've got bigger fish to fry and worry about. So I was probably feeling a bit, maybe I have to move on from this club. I'm just not getting any kind of energy back, what I think. And then, like I said, just one meeting with Paul Cook, and I'm going, wow, I really like this guy. I really like his energy. And don't be fooled, like I said, don't be fooled by the energy and the shouting on the touchline and the throwing the cup of teas and this and that. The guy knows his football. Like, you watch a game of football with him, he doesn't miss a trick. He'll pick up something that a centre half's doing while I'm watching the ball out in the left wing thing, and he's a real student of the game. And I'm really looking forward to next season, not just for the 23s and my individual journey, but I really think it's going to be a good season for Ipswich Town.
Is it? Do you feel, because obviously there's a lot of change going on, you talked about Andy Rolls coming in and all these other off-field staff and the takeover. Is there a kind of feeling of sort of enthusiasm and kind of around the club at the moment?
Well, obviously, when there's a lot of change, there's a lot of uncertainty. And like I said, listen, for all change and all positivity, there's going to be negativity, because you build relationships. It's been documented that Matt Gill and Joanne Nasher left the football club. So it's hard to me to talk about all the roses and blah, 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 when certain people have lost their jobs, if you know what I mean. It's the football business. I even touched on it. It's like when the club got relegated, Edwina, people like that, secretaries, they lose their jobs. Football is a very cutthroat business, and people lose their jobs, but it keeps rolling. It's like you've forgotten. So, like I said, there is a lot of there's going to be a lot of casualties along the way, and at the end of the day, if Ipswich goes on to bigger and better things, then you can live with the casualties. If I mean, like I even said, if I was told there was no role for me, he was bringing in a 23 manager, and then Ipswich got promoted the next season, then I'll be going fair play. Change, if you know what I mean. You could, at the end of the day, all we want is what's best for the football club, and what's best for the football club is promotion. So if we get the promotion and in the next 2 seasons is what is being obviously asked for, then the changes and the takeover and everything will be well worth it. And yeah, I'm just going on my personal opinion and what I've seen with the change and Mark Ashton coming in and the new owners, and it's all positive. And I'd be really excited if I was an Ipswich fan at home. Be interesting to see what the season tickets will be, but hopefully we get a few signings in, and then this place will be bouncing.
And we've not mentioned. Well, you've mentioned Terry Butcher a couple of times. How's it been working with him? Because I don't think you knew each other very well, did you? Before you sort of became 23.
It was crazy. So obviously I know Terry. You bump into places, but I wouldn't class Terry as someone I really knew well, or I wouldn't class as a friend. So when I was given the role as 23, they said Terry was going to be there to assist you. He was only going to be part-time. He was going to do 1 day a week and do a game. And Terry basically working for nothing, was with me every day. And probably the first real time I came across Terry is we did a dinner, and we were guest speakers at a dinner. It was me, Ray Parlour, and Terry Butcher. And obviously I knew Terry standing in the game, but I didn't realise that he's like up there with the Gazzers and that, national treasure. I just couldn't believe it. It was just like, why are me and Ray Parlour here? No one's even interested in hearing us or anything. It was all about Terry and his World Cup stories and the headband and the Maradona, and just going, sometimes you don't appreciate how big they are until you see them in the presence of other people. So that was probably the first real when I was like, wow, you're miles bigger than I could imagine with the national population. So so obviously, like I said, and we're fans of the football club, but like I said, I thought I was a big fan, but like every message that he delivers to players, it's always about this badge. Everything he says, honestly, the pride he has for this football club, he just like everything. You represent this badge. It's all about this badge. Do you know how important this badge is? And he's inspiring. He inspires me how committed to this football club he is and what he's done for this club. And I remember doing an article with your thing, and I still from that day when Brian, because young players, they obviously think they know Terry, but they don't know Terry, and it was young Twanda. And Brian went, "Do you know? Terry Butcher." You go, "But do you know about Terry Butcher?" And Brian gets the picture out with the bandages, right? And Twanda was like, you could see the admiration. That's Terry. I've seen that picture 100 times. And he went, yeah, of course that's Terry. And it's like they couldn't believe that it was Terry Butcher. They obviously, Terry Butcher used to play for Ipswich in England, but when they see the picture and they can really identify with that person, they were like blown away and just like, it's brilliant. We could be 4-0 up, and if we concede a goal in the last minute, honestly, Terry's boot and bottles, like the clean sheet means everything to him, and getting that standards to the defenders about do not switch off. It's just like so inspiring. It's like the closest person I've worked to at that age was Sir Bobby, and like to have that enthusiasm and passion still at that age is speaks volumes for the character. And I class Terry as a friend now, so not just a colleague, he is a friend. So I love Terry. I can see why everyone idolises the guy. I
We
really
haven't
care.
had a Sir Bobby story, and you did trial the Eric Gates story earlier on.
Yeah.
Go on, tell us the Sir Bobby stroke Eric Gates story then.
So this another thing. What makes me laugh is that like when Ipswich having bad times, and again, I'm not on social media, and they've got Mick Mills on the radio, and they have a few fans ring in, and staff or players talking about we're getting absolutely battered and da 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 da, and I'm thinking, battered? You call that battered? That is like tame. Mick Mills trying to slaughter you is very, very tame. Trust me, he's been very kind of neutral on it, and like the fans, I said the fans are venting, but that's not venting. So I go back to my time at Newcastle. It was every night they had a radio show from 5 o'clock in the evening to 7 o'clock, and it was called the Three Legends Show. So it was the Newcastle legend on it was Malcolm McDonald, Bernie Slaven was Middlesbrough, and Eric Gates was Sunderland. And I was driving back from somewhere, and I thought, let me put on the Three Legends. Let's see what they're talking about. And it was on the thing of, it must have been on about the Brat Pack of Newcastle, and Eric Gates was absolutely slaughtering me. I think him and Bernie Slaven were having this debate about Jonathan Green, and because Jonathan Green was now playing for Middlesbrough, and he was probably had about 3 good games on the trot, and they were like, he's better than Dyer, and just absolutely, it was ridiculous. And fans were jumping on the bandwagon and saying, yeah, they're crap and all this. So I was peed off. I was thinking, Eric Gates is an Ipswich guy. He's got to be sticking up for the Ipswich boys. So the next day I've gone into training and I've gone, Gaffer, by the way, Eric Gates, what's he picking on me for? And bloody blah. And he went, what do you mean? I said, he was absolutely slaughtering me, saying this and that, and I shouldn't be picked by you, and this and that. He went, you know why he's doing this, son? I said, no. He went, because you were better than him. And I went, what? He went, if I was to pick my best Ipswich 11, you'd be the number 10, not Eric Gates, and he knows that, and he's jealous of you. So I thought, he spun it in a way where I was thinking, he's just jealous because I'm better than him. So he just spun it around that way. And then, obviously, when I did my research and you see the videos, Eric Gates was a proper baller. So I think Bobby was just playing mind games with me there. He probably, I wasn't as good as Eric Gates. But again, just that making you feel special, and that, hang on a minute, you're better than Eric Gates. Don't worry about what he's saying. Just made me feel, yeah, what a prick. But he's obviously an Ipswich legend, and obviously, again, I get it. It's you've got to give an opinion, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. So I've got no problem with Gatesy, but I always say Bobby thinks I'm better than you, so that'll do for me.
Well, I think we've covered an absolutely enormous amount there, haven't we, Ben?
Yeah, Kieron, I mean, thank you so much for your time. Just to our listeners and to the Ipswich fans, obviously, Phil's been doing it as a journalist, but I'm a fan basically as a podcast. So thank you on behalf of everybody for your career and everything you've done for the club. Have you got a message to our listeners and to the Ipswich fans?
Well, one, I'm shocked of your knowledge of the game. You actually, a lot of media people and that, they talk a good game and have no knowledge of the game, but you've actually done your research. Unlike Phil, you have actually have real knowledge of the game, so I give you credit for that. I could talk football to you all day. I couldn't talk football to Phil all day because he just talks nonsense. And to all the Ipswich fans and Twitter, honestly, I know it's been a miserable 3 or 4. It's probably, well, you could say it's been a miserable, massive period in the club's history, but I really feel positive with the takeover. These people are serious people. They're going to give it a real good go. I've met the chairman. He's a fantastic guy. Obviously, I can't speak highly enough about the manager, and I'm telling you, there's going to be exciting times ahead, and I'm just glad that I'll be having a front row ticket to witness it. I hope you lot are allowed in Portman Road too, because I can't go. I wish I could go into more detail, but what I'm hearing, it's all positive, and yeah, we're all going to have a football club that represents us and does us proud, I think. So, yeah, roll on 2021-22 season.
Thanks for watching or listening to the Blue Monday podcast. And thanks to those of you who have kindly supported the channel via Acast or YouTube donations. You can follow us at the usual places on social media, and don't forget to subscribe so that you get our new shows first.